Okay, welcome to the Extra Time Talk podcast with me, your host, Andrew Aziz, and our expert guests. Do you want to introduce yourselves, guys?
Oh, I'm an expert guest now, am I? That's good.
Yeah.
That's great. George Pavlou, Extra Time Talk editor, Crystal Palace fan.
And Matt Jarvis, last word on football writer, Tottenham Hotspur.
Okie doke. So we're going to go through a few topics today, looking firstly at the big game this weekend, Man United Chelsea. Also looking at is this the closest title race in Europe, and look at a bit about the other leagues as well, and then relegation candidates as well. Okay, so let's kick off. So big game, Mourinho playing against Chelsea again. Matt, what do you think? How do you think it's going to go?
Big game. Obviously, a lot of talk about Mourinho and Chelsea. I'll be honest, I'll get straight to the point with it. I can't see anything other than a Chelsea win, and I think it could be comfortable. I think they're going to be quite defensive. I can't see him setting up attackingly at all in that game.
Hello? Hello?
I think it might have gone wrong at his end.
Hello, Matt, can you speak?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I can't really see anything but a comfortable Chelsea win. I was looking at some media at the weekend where there was a bit of an article asking fans about how they felt their teams were doing after the first, sort of few games of the season. And the Man United fan, when they were asked a question, what was their best performance of the season, he said it was the victory over Young Boys. Now, bearing in mind that Young Boys are pretty much a part-time average team in Europe. I mean, if that's what they're setting the benchmark as now, I really do worry for where their season's going to go. But for me, Chelsea, and I'm going to say it's going to be 3-0.
It's a big week for Mourinho, isn't it? When you think he's got Chelsea away on Saturday, and then he's got the Juventus game at Old Trafford in the midweek. Could this prove to be Mourinho's last week, do you think?
Could well be. You never know. As I say, I think Chelsea, I'm looking at 3-0. And I could quite easily see Juventus doing some damage to them as well. There'll probably be a very big atmosphere, you would think, for that game. There tends to be better atmospheres in Europe at Old Trafford than there in the Premier League. But yeah, I think it's a very big week. And I think if by the end of next week, Mourinho hasn't picked up, any points, and certainly if he loses both games heavily with poor performances, I'm not sure his position could carry on any longer.
What do you think, George? Do you think, there was a strange story that came out today that the Man U players are WhatsApping each other videos of Paul Scholes, Rio Ferdinand and Gary Neville making mistakes to make them feel better about themselves. What do you think of the United situation at the moment?
Well, I think it's pretty safe to say Mourinho's on borrowed time right now. The fans aren't happy with him. Most of the players clearly aren't happy with him. And I don't think he's really happy with the situation that's going on in the club himself, really. I think he probably expects better from whoever it is he's placing the blame on. We can probably say it's not him, given his history. But I can understand the players wanting a bit of motivation in terms of the whole watching videos, because it is a very high pressure situation, especially a club like Manchester United. So to try and get into their head that that it's okay to make mistakes, and in order to make sure that they learn from them, I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing. But the problem I'd say is I don't think a lot of them are learning from from their mistakes, and maybe that's why they're doing this, to try and fix this. But their performances, it's been the same old for the past 2.5 years now. Even since Mourinho joined, they've had some. It probably looked better under Mourinho in general than before Mourinho. But this past season it's been, up there with the worst it's been at Man United since Ferguson left. So, there's for me there's got to be massive changes at that club from the top down if United want to get anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, what did you guys think about Luke Shaw is coming out? He's going to sign a new contract. He's only really had kind of a good 10 games under Mourinho. Did you find it quite surprising that he's committed, especially when Man U are in crisis, and he's only just kind of got back in the team and so forth? Was that a surprise for you?
Yeah, well, we both know his history with Mourinho, don't we? The allegations that have been made regarding his treatment. But I think Luke Shaw, I mean, I think, if I remember correctly, he scored the winner against Leicester in the first game of the season. So he's probably seen this as a chance to prove himself and maybe even prove his manager wrong. But I think the main thing is Luke Shaw hasn't gotten a lot of football in a long time, which I suppose could make you wonder why he's not trying to seek football elsewhere when there's a lot of clubs that would probably have him on. But I just think there's probably, if he's staying at United right now, there probably aren't any options on him for the table, and he's just decided that he needs to get his head down and focus and up his game before he's willing to move anywhere else. So
yeah, I think it's a case for Luke Shaw. I think from his point of view, it's a case of he hasn't got much to lose. I mean, he's had a lot of criticism from his manager, very open and quite embarrassing criticism, really, from Mourinho. He started to sort of wend his way back into the team. Couple of maybe half decent, performances. Yeah, he got that goal against Leicester. I didn't really, in the transfer window, there didn't seem to be sort of anybody really knocking the door down to go and try and sign him. I mean, he was linked with Spurs again, along with the Alderweireld situation. But other than that, I think he's probably thinking he's probably on a bit of a win-win situation. Mourinho, is struggling. If he goes, a new manager might come in and give him more games. And he's nowhere near. He's not, he's not going to be somebody you'd expect to be starting for England, is he?
Well, I think it's left back at the moment. We do have quite a few options now because we've still got Chilwell, we've got Danny Rose, so we have got 2-3 options there. So he's still got a bit to do before he really nails down that spot. Just another point. I mean, with every international break, foreign players go back to their home countries and they love to talk about, clubs they dream of playing. This week we've had Lukaku going and saying how he'd love to play for Juventus one day. Do you think it's disrespectful to Man U? And Gary Pallister said this morning, found it very, very disrespectful when Lukaku's not playing well himself. What do you guys have? You guys any thoughts on that?
I think it's happening more and more, though, isn't it? It's not unique to Manchester United. It's happening with players. Eden Hazard had hidden his desire to play for Real Madrid. We live in a football world now where players aren't just say, "Oh, I don't want to play for them." Players are more open about it. I think, yes, it probably is disrespectful in the sense of somebody's still got a contract, but unfortunately, the reality is that the way football is, the way current contracts are, that actually contracts don't account for a great deal anyway. You can sign somebody on a 5-year deal, but still sell them the next summer. It's all about making sure that you get the most money for them. So, yeah, perhaps it is disrespectful, but I'm afraid it's just the way modern football is, and I don't think it's something we're going to see. We're going to see more of it, not less of it.
Yeah, I think it probably shows how far United's fallen as well. I mean, Juventus, no disrespect to them, they're a massive club, but they're probably not quite in the same league as Manchester United when you consider the history and the leagues they've played in. So for have Lukaku say his dream move is Juventus while he's, centre forward for Man United, it just says something, further about what's happened to them in the past few years.
Yeah.
Would you be upset if Wilfried Zaha came back from international break and said he wants to leave Palace?
Well, of course I'd be upset, but I mean, I can't really blame him, can I? I mean, we're relegation strugglers for the 6th year in a row, most likely, and he deserves to be, probably at a top 6 club. So I can't blame him.
Yeah. On to Chelsea. Guys, say possibly one of the most possibly the third most entertaining team to watch at the moment, creating lots and lots of chances with Jorginho dictating with Kante in this new role. Do you think they could be in the title race?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's the same sort of effect that tends to happen at Chelsea, where they get a new manager in, and that first season there tends to be a real bounce. We saw it with Conte, we saw it with Ancelotti, and Sarri is definitely getting that as well. I think he's playing better football than the two of them. So I definitely think Chelsea are in the shout at the title race. What happens after that? We all know what happened in the Conte Ancelotti scenarios. But I think, for this season, I definitely think they're in with a shout. They've probably played some of the best stuff, some of the best football in the league so far.
Yeah,
And
I totally agree with that. I think Chelsea are going to be in there with a shout. I would say probably, at least at this stage of the season, there is still a title race already. It was already starting to disappear at this time last season. But I think,
it was over.
Pretty much.
There was no title race last
At
season.
the moment, it's hard to argue. There's a lot of games to go. There's certainly 5 teams in it at the minute. There's only 2 points between fifth and the top place. But goal scored, goal difference, I think is going to play a very big part in where the title goes this season. If you look at Man City and Chelsea with goal difference of plus 18 and plus 13 respectively, and then if you look down to where Arsenal and Spurs are in 4th and 5th with only 9 and Spurs with a pretty woeful goal difference of plus 8, that's going to cause them potentially a lot of pain towards the back end of the season. But as it stands at the moment, I would say, there's 5 teams there, but over the coming weeks, and obviously as we head towards the Christmas period, it'll be interesting to see which team or which teams that pull away.
Chelsea, I was reading an interesting article this week which was talking about that at the moment Sarri doesn't have the striker that he'd wanted. When he was at Napoli, he had a very kind of mobile striker. He kind of converted him into a striker in Dries Mertens, and that at the moment with Giroud or Morata, he's kind of struggling to kind of get that same fluidity that he would want. I mean, they're doing really well anyway. Do you think their striker might be their weakness?
It could be in terms of goals, but I mean, at the moment, the goal difference is showing that they're okay from that point of view. What it might come down to is, as they start to do potentially better and fixtures become congested, I suppose it's, if that's their depth, their strength off the bench, Giroud's known for getting goals. I don't know. It could be something that might cause them a problem. I mean, with no disrespect to him, I think Glenn Murray at Brighton has scored more goals, I think, than those two both put together in the league. And he's 35 age, so I think it will all depend on FA Cup, Champions League, how they go in competitions, where their focus will be. But ultimately, as it stands at the moment, I think the thing is with Chelsea, they've got goals, defence, midfield, and and with it, Eden Hazard playing the way he's playing, if they keep him injury free, then he's going to score more than 20 goals.
Yeah, the thing I'd say about that is the only way to consistently guarantee yourself goals, and this is coming from someone who supports a team that hasn't had a recognised striker for about 4 to 5 seasons we've been up here. The only way to get yourself consistent goals, particularly at the top, is by having that proper centre forward. And if Sarri doesn't think that he's got one to suit his team, then that could see Chelsea potentially slip away in the title race if they're not careful. I mean, like I said, they're doing fine now, and they could probably keep it up for a bit longer. But unless Morata and Giroud can start delivering, then it could be a problem with them, especially if City and Liverpool keep picking up points the way they're doing.
Okay, so that's the Chelsea Man U preview done. Let's now look at, I think Matt talked about it. Are we seeing perhaps the closest title race we've seen for a while? Obviously, in the Premier League, the last few years, it has been kind of runaway winners. Really, the last really close title race was obviously the Aguero day back in 2012. Is this this sounds like it's a great thing for the Premier League at the moment? Would you guys agree?
Yeah, I would. I mean, at this stage, I think it's too early to talk about the title race in some ways because we are so early in the season. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see it close, and what we want to see is that going, into the kind of winter and into the new year. What we want to see is we want to see, it'd be great to see a 2-point gap still existing between the top 5 or even 6, because that then takes the last 3 months of the season where everybody is in that chance, and they're going to start thinking about it. It'll be very interesting to see if it is a similar 5 that are there at the moment. If there is a small gap, maybe even if it's only 6 points, which is only a couple of wins, it'd be very interesting to see what then happened in the January transfer market and see which teams, decide to do something, don't do something. I mean, I would certainly think from my team, from Tottenham's perspective, that if we are in and around the top four, and I expect, hopefully they will be, and there's only a few points in it, I'd have to hold my head, completely in my hands if we didn't at that point, make sure we made a couple of, marquee signings. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens.
Well, Andrew, you mentioned memorable title races as of late. I'm a bit disappointed you didn't mention the 2013-14 season, to be honest. 3-3 at Selhurst Park, Liverpool blowing it on the final few weeks of the season. I mean, that was a crazy season from start to end there. I mean, you had that position change about 20 times or something. But yeah, I get your point. Since then, it's pretty much been one team running away with the title the whole time. So, I mean, like I said, it is early days. You could have Liverpool and Chelsea lose like the next 5 games and have City run away with it again. But I don't think that's going to happen from what we've seen from them so far. And the way they played each other in particular, they look very, very close. So, like I said, I think if we can get to New Year and there's maybe 4 or 5 teams within about 3 points of each other, then that will be a really good spectacle. I think then we can say for certain at least 2 of those teams would carry on and fight it out till maybe even the last weekend of the season. I mean, it'd be great to go into the last day of the season with a title on the line. We haven't had that since, the Aguero day. So that would be great to see, of course. And it's just a great spectacle because we keep talking about the Premier League being the best in the world. I mean, we haven't had much drama with the top in so long. So I think we need something like that if we want to, prove the game is still where it is. It still has entertainment value. We need to show that all of our teams are just as good as each other. We're not pouring all our money into just one team.
I think you're right. I think especially if you compare it to the other leagues. I mean, I know this year Bayern are struggling a bit and Borussia Dortmund are kind of leading at the moment. But in Italy and France this year, Juventus, PSG, 100% records, winning games at a canter. I think we really need the Premier League not to turn into that with Man City, which last year, with them having the Centurion season, it really did. So I think for the Premier League saleability, and we really need it to be a bit closer. You mentioned that there might be 5 teams, Matt. So are you counting Spurs and Arsenal? You think they can definitely keep up the pace with the top 3?
My honest answer is that I don't know at this stage. But I think Arsenal, first couple of games weren't great, and they're on all competitions 9 unbeaten, and they do look certainly like a much better team, a little bit more coherent. Probably 3 years under Wenger. So it's certainly possible, but we'll see how they go. In terms of Tottenham, I mean, we've actually had our best start to the Premier League season since the inception of the Premier League, and we've not even played well. In fact, we've played pretty poor in some of the games. So if this is our kind of bad spell in terms of the football we're playing, then the signs there would be good, and we do tend to kick on a little bit late. So I think Man City, Chelsea, and Liverpool are going to be the 3 main teams that everybody's probably going to talk about and be favourites. But Arsenal and Tottenham, if they get themselves properly sorted out, pick up. There's no reason why they can't have an influence on it. Whether they can actually go and win it, I don't know. Tottenham's point of view, it's probably going to be dependent on the to-in and throw-in from Wembley, and we're looking at possibly the 15th of December for the Burnley game, I think, for the move to the new White Hart Lane. But yeah, I think at the moment, 2 points, those 5 teams are there. Come the end of this weekend, it could be a different scenario, but Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, I think you look at those 3 with their goal difference, they've definitely got to be the 3 main contenders at this stage of the season. But Arsenal and Tottenham will be 4th and 5th, I would expect. Which way around, I don't know. But they have got the opportunity there to go and make a statement and make a challenge and say, look, we're serious about having a go.
And George, what do you think? Do you think the title could go to North London?
Probably not, if I'm being honest. But I mean, it would be stupid to rule them out, like Matt says. So I think that I mean, City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, like you say, are the ones who've been doing the best so far. So everyone will talk about them. But I mean, if Spurs really aren't playing their best, and I don't have any reason to see that they are, judging from the performances I've seen, if they can really start stepping up and get some results against the bigger teams, I mean, they won 3-0 at Old Trafford, of course, but they lost at home to Liverpool. So they need to be more consistent as far as that's concerned. And then Arsenal still sort of finding their feet under Emery. I do think the system is picking up, and I think the players are getting used to the sort of football he wants to play. And he's becoming more methodical in his approaches. But I still think they're a ways off from. I think top 4 for them would be a good objective for them this season. Get them back in the Champions League, and then they can focus more on the title in the seasons to come. But Spurs really, and I would like to.
I think the one thing a bit lucky in is they've got this kind of underdog kind of tag this season, and when you look at some of their players, I mean, Aubameyang was 60 plus million, Lacazette is 55 million, Torreira is 30 million, Ozil is on £300,000 a week. I do think that they're a bit lucky to have this under, considering how much their team actually costs. But and I think they probably are enjoying that people wrote them off at the beginning of the year, said, oh no, it's going to be a transition year. And they might just benefit. I mean, the performance they put in against Fulham was very nice to watch. And really, Aubameyang and Lacazette together look like they're combining fantastically.
They do, but I think one of their best players, particularly in the Fulham game, was Ramsey. So it'd be interesting to see, how that pans out in terms of his situation, because I actually think the way he's played when he has come on and when he's played, and obviously that great team goal against Fulham, I think if they were to sign him up, and he was elsewhere in January, I don't know. I think that could be a miss for Arsenal at the centre of the park, so that could have a big influence on it. But yeah, I think 2 or 3 games they didn't look great at the back. They looked very slack and far too open. He seems to have picked up on that now, and that seems to be changing. I thought actually the first half against Fulham, I thought Fulham were actually really good in the first half of that game, strangely enough, and I didn't think Arsenal were that great. The second half, you could say Fulham were woeful, but Arsenal just played them off the park, and it was very quick, incisive football. But I think along with Spurs, what Arsenal have got to do is they've got to do it against the better teams that are going to be up the top end of the table, and that's going to be, I think, the ultimate test of whether they can. But I do take your point that they've spent a lot of money, very expensive players, so to have an underdog tag is quite odd in some ways. I'm not saying this just because I'm a Spurs fan, but when you look at kind of Spurs certainly should have an underdog tag this season because they didn't spend any money. None. For the first time in Premier League history, the only team in Premier League history to go and spend nothing and get the 2 points off the top of the table. It's a bit bizarre. But the amount of money Arsenal have spent, it seemed a bit early to write them off, certainly after the first couple of games when they did look a bit disjointed. But no, I don't think there's any case of. I'm certainly not seeing them as underdogs or anything like that. They'll certainly be around that top 5. I don't think there's any question.
Well, in the case of Spurs, I mean, what they didn't spend any money. You're right. But what they did do was tied a lot of their players, people like Kane, Dele Alli, Eric Dyer, onto more long-term contracts, so that they can't be signed, more easy for the next couple of years. So that's equally good business, in my opinion. So all right, they didn't spend any money, and that was probably a pretty poor move. They probably need to cut more players, but it definitely helped them secure, the players that they needed and kept a good morale within the team. And it's helped them keep the momentum going. So I think that's probably. I don't think spending no money is as big a negative as everyone is possibly making it out to be. And it doesn't surprise me actually that they're quite cemented in the top 4. I predict they'll get top 4 at the beginning of the season, even though they didn't spend any money.
Right.
I think the biggest ridiculous comment of the week goes to Sam Allardyce, who said that he thought that Eric Dyer is as good as Sergio Busquets. I think that is the best comment. So no, that absolutely. When I heard that on the radio, it absolutely blew my mind. I was just
Sam Allardyce, the tactical gravy drinker himself.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, that is the typical English comment, isn't it? That obviously our betters.
I mean that's a crazy comment. The one thing I will say though is I know he got a yellow card for it, but actually the challenge he did on Ramos, I think, is one of the best proper football challenges I've seen in a long time.
Proper Brexit tackle, that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a bit more decisive.
the biggest fail comment ever of comparisons was when Man City, their chief exec at the time, they were linked with Kaká, and the chief exec came out and said, "Oh, we don't need Kaká. We've got Stephen Ireland." I mean, that is
I remember that.
that is the biggest comment I think that we've.
Where is he? Where's he now? Where's he now?
I
Barcelona?
think he's training with Stoke. He doesn't have a contract.
Right.
Oh, okay. I thought he was playing in League One, but I might be thinking of someone else.
Yeah, he is training. He's training with Stoke, but he doesn't have a contract. So, I'm sure Kaká is like, oh, I wish I was as good as Stephen Ireland sometimes. But moving on, so let's go on to the, unfortunately for me and George, perhaps the relegation battle. Now, lots of people have been talking about who's likely to go down. Looking at the bottom, I'd say there's 5 teams at the moment, maybe 6.
Well,
Who do you think at the moment is likely to go down?
Well, I mean, at the moment, I actually think, as you look at it at the moment, there's probably anybody from, you could say Burnley, but I think Burnley have kind of sorted themselves out now. Anybody potentially from Brighton down is going to be there. But I think if I look at it very much at this minute, Cardiff City, I think, have got every single chance of beating Derby County's record of 11 points and being relegated, because they're letting goals in, they're not scoring. And, Warnock's got a great tradition of getting teams out of the Championship into the Premier League, but he gets to the Premier League and he just can't manage at that level. We've seen it time and again. And, and another thing as well is when you've got a team like Cardiff who are going to be down at the bottom, and expect that, to then go and contest a red card, which people have seen on TV, would have been fitting in a game of rugby or another game. To actually do that, to then extend the punishment to one of your better players, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Cardiff fans, and it was on social media, they were absolutely raging about him contesting that. I mean, that to me was just madness.
George, do you have any thoughts on? Obviously,
I think the Derby comparison. Having been manager of having Warnock as manager before, he did a decent job with us in the Championship, got us to the playoffs. Couldn't get us past Bristol City though over 2 legs, despite leading in the away leg into extra time. So, take that as you will. But regardless, the second spell in the Premier League, Matt's right, he just wasn't up for it. With the players, to be fair, it was just after Tony Pulis had left, so it was still a bit of a mess. But we only managed 3 wins in, I think, 16 games, and we were in the bottom 3 until Alan Pardew, of all people, had to save us. So you're in for a rough time when Alan Pardew's making you look bad. I do think Cardiff are heading for the drop, unfortunately. Still no wins. They've had plenty of chances to get one. But I don't think they will break Derby's record. I think they are going to manage a win or 2 in between that time. I think the other team that I think look pretty nailed on for relegation is Huddersfield. They think they'll have a bit more fight than Cardiff, but I think with the players that they haven't brought in too many key name players. I mean, their squad wasn't that great to begin with. I know they're not on a big budget. I think they've done well for where they are. But in terms of what you need to stay in the Premier League, I don't think they've invested in enough in the right areas, or invested in the type of player that you need to stay in the Premier League, in my opinion. And, the game, when we went to Huddersfield back in September, we weren't even very good that day. It was a pretty poor performance. We had to have Zaha bail us out once again. And we still made it through that game. Huddersfield didn't really offer, when they did offer a threat, they didn't take advantage of it. So that's really worrying when you're down there at the bottom, is you need to be scoring goals. And Huddersfield aren't. So those are probably the 2 safest bets at the start of the season, definitely the safest bets now for relegation, in my opinion.
A lot of people have said that perhaps David Wagner's should be looking elsewhere. He's not going to do much better with Huddersfield. He did an amazing job getting them up. Obviously, he's got this association with Jurgen Klopp, which will always help him whenever he looks for jobs. Do you think he should be looking elsewhere, Matt, for another job?
I think what you've got to remember with Wagner is when he took the job at Newcastle, he's not actually, at Huddersfield, apologies. At Huddersfield, he'd not actually been a manager. So he'd been, I think, with Klopp, he was, sort of number 2 with the youth team. So I think he's done a great job with Huddersfield. No, I think he comes across as a very intelligent guy. I think he's very passionate. I think Huddersfield are going to struggle, and as it looks at the minute, they may drop. But I have seen the last couple of performances, I have seen a bit of a spark there that suggests that they might be just starting to get in the right frame of mind. No, I think he should stick with Huddersfield for now. I mean, obviously, if a bigger club comes in, you can understand why he'd be linked and why he might look. But actually, he's quite early still in his own education of being a manager of a team. So if I was him, I'd probably stay where he is for now and see how things progress. I mean, interestingly, I kind of mistakenly said Newcastle there, but I mean, depending on what the situation is there as the season goes on, would that be a club he'd go to? But I suppose the situation with Huddersfield, as you well know, Andrew, is that he's not going to have any more money. In fact, probably have less money at Newcastle than he's got at Huddersfield. So, but yeah, it's an interesting one. But if I was him, I'd probably stay put for now.
Okay, well, you've mentioned them now. So it's time for us to talk about Newcastle. I think at the moment we are really, really struggling. I think the sale of Mitrovic is going to come back and haunt Rafa. I think fine if you don't rate him, sell him, but don't sell him to a club who are going to be in contention with you. Fulham now are just above us, and they are just above us because of Mitrovic, who scored more goals than any of the Newcastle players. I think the lack of goals is a big, big problem, and I think our defence isn't that bad. I think it's all about our attack, and I think that the defenders would improve if they had players who could release pressure, but I don't think we do have that at the moment. I think if Rafa manages to keep this squad up on this budget, then he's done a miraculous job. I just think that Mitrovic sale is going to come back and haunt him, because it's fine selling him as long as you know you're going to have the funds to replace him. He knows Ashley's record. He knows that he tells you one thing and then this has all come out in Keegan's book. He tells you one thing and then it's a complete, absolute lie. No other words.
With Rafa.
Sorry?
It was very naive of Rafa. That
very naive.
Yeah.
Very naive. I mean,
well, I think it's safe to say. I mean, if you didn't have Rafa Benitez as your manager, then I think you'd probably be in the same boat as Huddersfield and Cardiff in terms of how many people think you'd go down. Because I mean, he took pretty much that exact same squad and got them to 10th last year. So that proves his capabilities as a manager. I mean, already. So I mean, that's the reason I didn't tip them to go down, is because I thought Rafa's organisation would keep them up. But so far, it's not easy to see that.
I'll tell you, when I went to watch us Man City, when we played them at the Etihad, there was 3 quite knowledgeable Man City fans sat behind me, and they were saying, "Oh, they don't know any of the Newcastle players," which I think tells you how far Newcastle have fallen. We've always had, Talisman, a very good player who, is very good, and these fans didn't know any of our players, which I think tells you how far we've fallen in terms of the quality of our squad. Really.
The big problem that Newcastle got, and I know you don't need me to tell you, Andrew, but when you've got a chair,
I've made it clear more than enough times on this podcast, trust me, mate.
But I think the problem you've got with Newcastle is when you've got a chairman, when you have got an owner who's clearly more interested in using the funds to go and buy House of Fraser than buying a striker.
That's such a bizarre one, isn't it? Why House of Fraser of all places?
Which shows, though, that he has got the money. He's got money. If he wanted to invest in Newcastle Football Club properly, Mike Ashley could do it. The fact is, as I see it, he doesn't want to invest. He's interested in his other business, and I don't understand it. The only saving grace for me as a Spurs fan is Mike Ashley. He used to be a season ticket holder and he's a big Spurs fan, which is known. But thank God he's not running my club. That's all I can say.
So the story which came out a few weeks ago was that he decided to do a team bonding meal. He took them out to a very cheap, sounds like it, restaurant where it was like a special for £7, and then he said to them, this really annoyed me, I've got to say. I'm not usually get annoyed. He said to them, "Look, guys, if you stay up, I'll take you all on holiday." These are multi-millionaires. I'm sure they could afford their own holidays.
That story
just
tells you
sign a striker. They don't need holidays. We need a
That
striker.
story tells you absolutely everything you need to know about Mike Ashley. Team building, it's supposed to be a team bonding activity, right? Really a bit of camaraderie. Picks the cheapest restaurant he can find because there's a deal on. And then
But did you see what he bought them?
he's so disconnected from he's so disconnected from the players that he doesn't even realise they're taking him a holiday. They could do that any weekend they wanted. So
I mean, he does
Did
treat
buy
his
them
Sports
pepperoni
Direct
pizza?
employees very badly. They're all on 0-hour contracts and so forth. So maybe that tactic works with them. But for multi-millionaire footballers who are on £40,000 a week plus, a lot of them, that just shocked me. I was very, very disappointed. All right, let's move on for Newcastle because I mean it's a big game this weekend. We're playing Brighton at home, possibly our most winnable match this season. We've had a tough start in terms of games, and there were signs in that first half against Man United that we were more attacking and we had a bit of quality. Though Man U were terrible in that first half. Hopefully it will be, but Chris Hughton against his old club as well. So there's a few things. That is a big game.
Massive. And you know what, Chris Hughton, I was looking at the relegation earlier, and he kept them up last year. Do you know, Chris Hughton, I think, is one of the most underrated managers, probably in the Premier League and Championship levels. I don't think he gets enough credit for how well, I mean, when he was at Newcastle, the pressure that he had. And to be fair, he probably had even less money than Rafa Benitez, and he didn't have the same stock as Benitez. So, and I think he's doing a great job with Brighton. I think he's a really likeable guy, and I hope at some point he gets a chance with perhaps a team that's got a little bit more money to see what he can do.
I think Chris Hughton struggles with this whole thing about you need a certain image for the manager now. They have to be very talkative. They have to be. He struggles with that, and I think that's one of the reasons. I think wrongly that Ashley got rid of him. He didn't think he was glamorous enough. He's a brilliant manager, but they found him a bit boring and a bit. Personally, I would never have got rid of him. I thought he was doing a very, very good job, and I think he's proven. Possibly the second season with Norwich, he struggled a bit, but the other jobs he's done since then, he did very well with Birmingham. He did well with Norwich the first season, then made a couple of mistakes, but has gone taking Brighton to the Premier League for the first time. I do think he deserves a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think his approach is actually working better with the general public than someone like that. I mean, he's not talkative. He's not. I mean, he's not arrogant. He's very humble. He keeps to himself, and he clearly shows a care for his team and a care for his staff and everyone in the club. So he comes across as the sort of person that people clearly like to work under. I mean, hell, even as a Palace fan, I can't. He's a Brighton manager. I can't find any reason to dislike him as a person. I just hate the fact that he's Brighton manager. But I think about 12th or 13th is probably the best that they could hope for under Hughton. Brighton hope for under Hughton. I don't really think he's that sort of manager who can maybe push teams towards Europe, apart from maybe half a season. But I think Brighton, having just come up from the Championship a couple of years ago, will probably be happy with that for the next couple of years while they bring in the money and improve the infrastructure and all that sort of thing. Although they've got a good setup already. So,
but 12th or 13th, I mean that in some ways for Brighton. I mean, 2 seasons. I mean that'd be success this season. For a team.
Well, exactly, yeah.
At Brighton, the one team I tell you who I do think need to be worried, who are down there at the bottom. Southampton.
Yeah. I think for me the advantage is if they can get Danny Ings firing, they'll be fine. Because goals keep you up, and Danny Ings does have, he has a history of scoring goals. Problem is he's also injury prone, a bit like Charlie Austin, who they've also got. So if they can get those two firing and get enough goals between them, they should be okay. But they've been falling for a while now, like you say. I mean, all that money they've got from players being sold to Liverpool, barely any of it's gone back into the club in comparison. And it's cost them. I mean, I said this when they started taking the players, I think under Koeman, even though they did really well under him, I said, eventually they can't keep recruiting as well as they have with the little money as they have. Eventually it's going to come back to bite them in the backside. And it has by the looks of it.
They did spend quite a bit of money compared. I think Southampton and Fulham, in comparison to Huddersfield, Cardiff and Newcastle, have spent a bit of money. I mean, they spent 22 million on Vestergaard, the centre back. Obviously, he's Van Dijk's replacement.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, but when you compare that to the money that
Yeah.
they've made over the previous years, I mean, they sold Van Dijk for 75 million in January.
Yeah.
Didn't buy any. I don't think they bought anyone during that window. Certainly not for as little bit as that price.
Yeah.
They had like Mane for 35 million or whatever it was. So it's these, when you consider how much money that they've sold, that money they've made up selling them. Really, they should be spending like 20, 25 million on on one player every single window, because that's what they're making.
But having said that, I think one of their biggest problems, and Andrew and myself discussed it a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, there's one big problem there for Southampton, which I think could do them badly, and it's called Mark Hughes. I do not understand why people keep appointing Mark Hughes as manager. I do not understand it.
I don't know what you mean. It's the referee's fault why Mark Hughes hasn't won the Champions League.
Oh, sorry.
I think Mark Hughes, he's obviously had some bad spells, and I think he has eventually his methods just he sort of runs out of gas almost. We saw that at Stoke where he just couldn't take them any further. But if you look at his record in the Premier League, it's really actually quite decent. I mean, he did well at Blackburn, he did okay at City, even though they did have a lot of money poured into that team. And Stoke, he did lead them to 3 consecutive top half finishes before, like you said, it all peaked out at the end. So I think there is the potential he could keep Southampton afloat for a little bit. But I think I could agree with you in the sense that it's definitely not a very good long-term appointment, because you're really looking at keeping afloat for the next few seasons. And considering Southampton have been in European football multiple times since they've been back in the Premier League, it's not a good look for them. And I can't, I think things could get worse for them if they don't sort their act out quickly.
Okay, the big spenders, Fulham, who have spent huge amount of money. I'm just going to read some of their signings. So they bought in Jean-Michel Seri for 27 million, Aguiza for 22 million. Obviously, they bought Mitrovic for 27 million, Mawson 15 million, Joe Bryan 6 million, and the goalie from Besiktas for 5 million. And they've obviously bought Schürrle on loan as well. Is it too many players in one? Have they gone for too many players? It's disrupted the team now, and that's why they're struggling. I mean, they looked quite weak defensively against Arsenal. Is that the reason why they're struggling as well?
Well, they also lost. It's worth noticing they lost Ryan Fredericks as well. They're right back to West Ham. He left. He left his contract was up in the summer, so that's clearly been a big loss for them. I think, even though they probably have got players who can do a similar job there, he was a part of the team and a part of that. That heart of the promotion squad. So I think that will probably hurt them there. In terms of Schürrle, I mean, from what I can gather from the Fulham fans, he really hasn't been impressive in this spell so far. So that looks like a bit of a waste of money, even if it was a loan. Mitrovic has done well, and I think Seri's done really well. He was probably the best player on the pitch when Palace played on the opening day. But other than that, I think you're right that there's a lot of players who haven't pieced together yet. So I
mean, they've got Callum Chambers on loan as well. Fosu Mensah on loan. They got in Vieto from Atletico Madrid. They have signed over. I remember the season when Sunderland signed more than 10 players, and it just completely disrupted their rhythm because they were all new players. Do you think it'll just take a bit of time to gel?
I think so. I mean, when you sign that amount of players, I mean, if you look back to, I mean, I know it was when Spurs lost Bale, but I mean, we kind of sold him and signed 7 players and tried to replace one with 7. And those amount of signings, they very rarely do work. I've been a little bit surprised with Fulham. I mean, they have made those signings, but I did expect more from them so far, because they have got some good players. Sessegnon obviously stands out. So I'm a bit surprised, but it does look like they've not quite gelled yet. The manager, I mean, if he tells you it's Tuesday on a Wednesday, it's definitely Tuesday. He's a scary man, but I think when he speaks, he's quite eloquent. A couple of wins and it'll move, hopefully, for them, kind of move them up. But considering again the money they've spent, it's not quite working for them. But then the same, look how many signings, West Ham United, look how many signings they made, and they're only what? Where are they? 4. They're only 4 points above the relegation zone. So making lots of
Chicharito talking about Champions League as well. Dream on, kid.
Yeah.
well, Mark Noble did say the other day that Tottenham and West Ham have had very similar starts to the season. Well, when I checked Spurs,
please,
and they're 4 points off the bottom.
They'll do anything to get above Spurs, won't they? They really will.
They will, even if it's not. Brilliant.
Okay. I think we can't really go the full show without. We don't beat Spain away very often.
No, we don't. No.
We don't, so we may as well enjoy it whilst we did. Do you think that's the best performance from an England team since
Oh,
Germany in 2001?
wow.
The first half.
Well, it'd be daft of me to say no. Let's not. There's a lot of cynics out there who try and look at all of the negatives. That first half performance was absolutely. It was what England should have been doing for years. England's quality, they're not keeping on the ball for ages. They're playing at pace. That they're using their strength. That first half was like a whirlwind. It was. I just thought it was incredible. And I'll be accused of bias because I know he didn't score again. But in that first half, I thought Harry Kane was absolutely world class. His hold-up play, his passing, his everything he did. If people, and I did see people the next day in the media saying, "No, he didn't score again. He had a poor game." Nonsense.
Oh my days.
No. Sterling, great to see him finishing. He got a lot of stick, but he keeps getting in the positions. No, I thought first half England were like a whirlwind. I thought second half it was a bit like a gentle breeze. It was a little bit. We took his foot off the gas a bit too much, but and again, I know I mentioned it earlier. I mean, the challenge from Dyer, I think that encapsulated what England were about. And what I love about Gareth Southgate being the England manager is that we referred to Luke Shaw earlier about perhaps working to get back in the England team. You don't have to now be playing for Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal. You don't have to be playing Liverpool. You don't have to be playing for those teams to now get a chance to play for England. And we've always got that wrong. If you look at Germany and Spain, they've always had those players sometimes from perhaps the lesser well-known teams in their leagues. And I think it's fantastic that he's giving so many people a chance. And I've never felt so positive about England, probably, from the World Cup to now and what happened in the next 2 years. I've never felt this positive about England for 20 years.
Yeah, I think we were all feeling a bit deflated after Russia. I mean, we did well to get to the semi-finals, but there's this talk about it was an easy run and all that. Croatia, the first decent team we came up against. Well, to be fair, a lot of that was probably some very loud dissenting Welsh and Scottish voices. But I also I think this was the lift of ever since then. I mean, we lost to Spain earlier in the Nations League and drew against Croatia, so I think this was sign of that we've still got some fire in us and that we can still go places. And the fact this is such a young team as well, the players like Kane have still got a hell of a lot of years left in them, and he's one of the oldest ones as well. And like you said, there's some really great players coming through. I mean, James Maddison getting called up. He's absolutely brilliant for Leicester. So if we can develop him into a great player, he'll be a real asset for England. I completely agree with you about Harry Kane. I think anyone who doesn't think he's world class, needs to watch his performance during that Spain match. He knows that was apart from the goal, it was the complete centre forward performance you could ask. It was everything you could have asked of him. So.
Did you see Sergio Ramos before the game? He said, "Oh, Harry Kane's a very clever striker, but don't worry, I'll have it. He won't be clever against me." And then Kane, and Sterling and Rashford all tore him to pieces.
Your idea of being clever is kicking the hell out of a player until they get injured, so that they're not a threat. So I don't know what you're calling not clever, mate.
And I think as well, I think that there's quite a close bond with a lot of the Spurs play that they've built up over the last few years. And I have a feeling that Eric Dyer, I think that challenge may have just been a little bit of his response to those.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point, yeah.
Maybe he's good friends with Mo Salah and it was like revenge for Mo Salah.
When would they have had a chance to be best friends?
I don't know. Maybe I'm sure the whole of Egypt just rejoiced with that tackle when he took him out.
Maybe Eric Dyer's got some Egyptian family,
second possibly, cousin. Yeah. But I think it'll be an interesting week this week as well. So after the matches, we've got the Champions League. Spurs are playing PSV. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah,
could it be a bonus if you go out? Do you think so you can concentrate on the league?
I don't think it's a bonus because you want to be in these competitions.
Yeah.
I think the second half against Barcelona we were much better. We did, we should have really won in Milan. We've got to try and make the best of those games we've got left, and hopefully, give ourselves the chance. I wouldn't see it as a bonus being knocked out because you want to be in them. Whether it turned out to be that way, I don't know. But these are a very big few weeks coming up for Spurs because we've got West Ham, PSV, West Ham again. We've got some very, very big games, and come Christmas, Tottenham could be very much on for a fantastic season. Come Christmas, they could also be on for a very disappointing season.
And George, what do you think about you playing Everton away?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't mention us in the relegation scrap.
I
I definitely wouldn't rule us out of it just yet. I mean, I went to the Wolves match I think it was last Saturday, or Saturday before last. Sorry, no, my bad. And it was one of the worst performances I've seen in a very long time from us, particularly at home. I mean, Wolves weren't even playing that great themselves, but they did enough to win the game. And even when there was just no creativity from us. Even when we were 1-0 down, there was no urgency. And I think it's just like, I don't know. I think Roy Hodgson is sort of, I mean, I love the bloke for everything he did last season, but I just think that he's losing the plot a little bit. I mean, Max Meyer didn't even start. He hasn't started for all games except for Bournemouth. And when he came on, he made an absolutely complete difference. He should be starting, and he's Jeffrey Schlupp starting over him. He's been absolutely useless so far, apart from the Fulham match. So
was the Benteke injury, was that a blessing in
yeah,
disguise?
well, it's the weird thing. That's the weird thing is that we all moan about Benteke and not scoring, but I think we probably missed him quite a bit in that game because at the very least, we could have punted balls up to him and he could have held the ball up for someone to get in, even if he couldn't score. With Ayew, we just don't have that because he's too small and he's not getting on any of the chances either. So even though I'd much rather we had a centre forward that actually put the ball in the net. You've got to make the best of a bad crop, and I think Benteke is probably the best we could hope for at this point. So
it's okay, George. You can buy Hosley off us in January if you want.
You know what? I wouldn't even mind giving him a go if we got him on cheap. I mean, I shouldn't have that attitude because we've tried so many players. I mean, Sorloth. I think there is talent in him, but he's not ready for England yet. He needs a loan out of the Championship to get used to the football here, in my opinion. But the big problem for us is goals. We still haven't scored a single goal at home this season. And even the games we have won, Fulham and Huddersfield, I didn't even think we played that well in them. I think Fulham outplayed us for most of the first half. And like I said, Huddersfield, if they'd taken a chance, it could have been a very different game. So I probably think we'll be okay given Roy's experience and the fact that I think there probably are three worse teams than us. But right now, it's not looking good, really, which is a real shame because this season could have been a great one. And it looks like we might have blown it again.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how things go. Thanks for joining us on the Extra Time Talk podcast. Please join us next week and leave a comment. Thanks very much. Bye from me.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.